Well, supposedly 1989 was a bad year for horror. That's what people say. However, there was some real guilty pleasures of mine in this year. So I do have a funny opinion because there was the likes of I Brought a Vampire Motorcycle, a ridiculous British horror film, which I watched at a young age on VHS, and it's got Neil Morrissey from Men Behaving Badly, the UK TV comedy series. Now, that was a different kind of role for him. That film, it's a bit underappreciated, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about it. The other year, it did come out on Blu-ray in the UK, but like there are crazy scenes. It's about a motorcycle that is possessed by a vampire because as a vampire is getting killed in the opening scene, he puts his blood in the petrol tank of the motorbike, and there is mad. It is a comedy horror, but I mean it has dropped rating to a 15 now. It was a hardcore 18 when I was younger, and there is a really nasty toilet gag in that film. You have to see it to believe it. It's out there. It is really out there. Something you don't see every day. There's crazy fun action set pieces mixed in with some pretty gnarly, gory scenes with a motorcycle as a vampire. I mean, that for 1989, that alone is pretty amazing. That film, it isn't spoken about enough. It is underappreciated. If you've not seen it, I urge you to go and see it. And that to me makes 1989 not really a bad year for horror. You've got Luther the Geek as well, which is a really trashy, independent, fun film. Again, quite a gnarly piece. I mean, these aren't masterpieces, but they are fun indie cinema history, which again, I feel like it makes 1989 not the worst year for horror. Dead Calm is another film that come out in 1989, and that was a very impactful, suspenseful film. I mean, it's classed as a horror. I think it's more of a thriller, but still, it's got the tension of a horror film with Sam Neill as a very interesting character in that. Nicole Kidman as his partner, grieving over the loss of their child, which they have guilt for, and then Billy Zane is a psychopath to put a spanner in the works of that relationship. Very tense, very thrilling, and a film that again over the years seems to have quieted down, and I don't hear brought up a lot. That is a very tense movie. It's a masterclass in suspense. It's an edge of your seat thing to me. I like it a lot. Borders horror, but it is classed as a horror. I say more thriller, but thriller and horror go a little bit hand in hand here. Also, Phantom of the Mole, Eric's Revenge. What a crazy movie. That is, it's a car wreck of a film in a way. It is really trashy. It's so over the top and ridiculous, though. It is such good fun. I was entertained from beginning to end of that movie. I mean, it is outrageous. It's ridiculous. It's so over the top. The fact that it is so over the top makes it what it is. That's the kind of film where you can't be too much over the top. That film is committed to going above the line and crossing the line, and I can just have a lot of fun. They are real popcorn flicks. If I've had a bad day or I'm stressed out or I just even want background viewing while I'm doing stuff, sticking most of these films on this list I'm going through, sticking them on, it's great. You can kick back and just, they can cheer me up. They're escapism. They can take me out of a bad mood. They are pure entertainment, and that's what sometimes that's what film and cinema should be about. I do love the artistic side and expressing yourself and being deep, but it is also great just to go and be mad, really, and have a good time and just escape life's worries and lose yourself in a really fun movie. And these aren't nasty films either, like some horror, even more recent horror and the real indie underground stuff, which I've been a part of, which I have a love for, but that can be really nasty, in your face, disturbing stuff. And that's one set of films and audience there, which sometimes I do like to delve more and more into if you're in the right mindset. But also it is great to mix it up with some mindless fun, some real fun, chill out time, and these films are exactly that, really. There is also The Dead Next Door, the great Super 8 movie. It's quite an inspirational film to up and coming filmmakers, a DIY production, and that was an '89 movie, and that stands out to me. And you know, that's an inspirational piece to me. So again, makes me really appreciate 1989. And also, you know, Pet Sematary, the original Pet Sematary, come out in '89, which it took me a while to get to that one. And Stephen King films, well, films based on the works of Stephen King, they're hit and miss sometimes. And I do find Pet Sematary a weird, interesting film. It's a little bit of a mess. I'll be honest. I find it. There's a lot going on. Some of it doesn't work for me, and bits feel out of place. But overall, it is still a pretty cool horror film, and that is one of the more darker edged ones. It's got the horrific scene of a toddler being taken, you know, losing its life, and the grief and the aftermath that comes with that. You really feel that the film really does explore the element of grief and losing a child, and where it takes you in a mind space to, you know, making you make irrational decisions, and losing all control of oneself. I'm not overly keen on although it's a supernatural film, spoiler alert, but you know, the dead coming back to warn, in that the warnings that the dead give, I wasn't completely sold on that. I would have rather it just stuck with the, you know, resurrecting the dead but them coming back, not right. That's a very interesting concept, that, you know, dead is dead, let it be. You know, messing with that makes it wrong. But you know, the film has some really tense and scary, horrific moments in it, and you know, if you're a parent, you can really resonate with that film as well. It does hit deep, it hits hard, it cuts very deep. Society, now what a film that is. Now, you know, I was going to bring that up on what makes '89 great, but you know, I'm going to talk about it here, where, you know, that is a real body horror film. Now, I like body horrors. They can be really unsettling and uncomfortable viewing, and you know, the likes of David Cronenberg and films that he makes and things like that. Society is very much on that level. You know, at the time, and when I was younger and saw it, the ending and the visuals of that, they're raw, they're outrageous. They pack a punch, and it stays with you. There are scenes from that film years later that makes it unforgettable, and it stays with you. And to me, a film which you don't forget or you think about long after seeing it, that's impactful, and that makes a good film for me sometimes. You know, it doesn't have to be a masterpiece, but if it's left an imprint on you and something worth discussing, then I feel like they've achieved something. The filmmakers have achieved something for sure. And Society definitely packs a punch, and it's still a relevant film. The undertones of that film are still relevant to today. You know, it does explore an interesting area of society, fitting in, you know, how people are desperate to fit in, what does it take to fit in, corruption. I mean, at the front, it's a gross out body horror, but it has depth and meaning. So as I was saying earlier, Society isn't just a fun popcorn flick. That's a deeper film. It's got a lot to say for itself politically and, you know, socially. And I respect that, and I like that. So it's nice to explore that film, because it isn't just a popcorn flick. It's deeper. It carries a message. And if you've not seen it, I completely recommend that. That is very high up there. Probably one of my biggest recommendations for horror films of 1989 is Society. I love that film. I have a really nice edition. I have a few editions of that film. It sits with pride of place in my collection. And yeah, it's one I also want to revisit. It's been a while. That is a film I do like to revisit now and again, because, you know, I don't get bored of it. The effects are incredible, by the way. The you know, practical effects all the way. I am a bit of an old school film lover. I come from a bit of DIY filmmaking, so I do really appreciate awesome practical effects, and that film has that. It's not ruined by, you know, modern CGI techniques and things. So, you know, that's another really appealing thing to me about Society, is you can really see the production values of that, and it holds up today. It still looks incredible. The film looks amazing. It's, you know, it's not really aged at all. It's a great movie. Highly recommend it, and again, makes '89 to me a special year for horror, not a bad one. Parents 1989 is alright. It's this is where horror for me started to go a little bit more slapstick and move into the '90s trope, which, you know, it's okay, but I'm not the biggest fan of, because they are quite silly to me. The humour's a little bit too tongue-in-cheek, but there is some great cinematography in it, and it is a fun movie. But I do find the balance of humour like not completely to my cup of tea. Again, depending on your age and your nostalgia, I know some people love that. I like quite dark humour films, which obviously this film does contain, but comedy to me is a hard balance, and the thing with Parents is that to me sometimes the balance isn't quite there, but it's still an entertaining film, and it is actually one that I don't see loads about. I know it's recently found a Blu-ray home, but it's definitely one when I was growing up that wasn't really spoken about much or out there as much as others, which is a bit of a shame. But you know, it's okay background viewing. It's certainly not one of my higher rated 89 films. It's not a highlight for me from the 80s at all, even from that decade. It's just an average okay horror film that I'd put on that side of the things. Stepfather 2 is an interesting one because my main issue with it, well, it's not really an issue, it's more, it feels like a cheap made for TV movie. And now ironically the film was supposed to be a straight to video production anyway, but it was later down the process of making it that, you know, the wine scenes were involved, and it was chosen to actually have a cinema run as well, which, you know, I don't think the film was ever set out to really be that. That's the problem. And poor Jeff Burr, he always gets the raw end of the deal. He had the issues with Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and he had a similar issue with Stepfather 2. The film is okay, but it feels cheap. And it feels like a bit of a cash-in, tacky sequel, which essentially is what it is. So it's not a great way to end the 80s with horror, having that. But it falls into the same issues of just, you know, cashing in on a sequel to a kind of successful horror film. And you know, that's still happening today. They never learn the Hollywood system. But it suffers what some of the later Amityville films suffered, which is just a cheap direct-to-video TV-style movie cash-in. It doesn't really do a lot. It's just a very forgettable, average horror film, unfortunately. So the Phantom of the Opera 1989 is an interesting one, you know, having Freddy Krueger play the Phantom, Robert Englund, which it's really odd because it's very Freddy-like, you know, just not with the full Freddy makeup, but with an alternate makeup. You know, it's like the voice is there. It's like watching Freddy Krueger seduce the woman to him. It is visually quite a stunning film. I do really like the effects. It's, you know, on par with Society when it comes to practical effects. And it visually is a very nice looking film. It's a different kind of style and tone and melody to that film. It's quite a quiet piece to me. A grand classic story in a very visual fantasy way. But, you know, I do like it. But it's just a quiet film that doesn't make a massive impact. And again, it's Phantom of the Opera has been done a lot, so it's kind of it joins the list of many films that explores that. But it is a very, you know, I've said it again, I'll say it again, it's I do really like the cinematography and the visual element to it. And again, it's got some quite gruesome-esque moments in that. It is a film I recommend. It is a film that I do give a recommendation to. If you like Freddy Krueger, then you might have a good time with the alternate version, The Phantom. Psycho Cop 1989, not to be confused with Maniac Cop 1988. Very similar film, like a real cash-in, you know, a real rip-off. And, you know, Maniac Cop was a cheap B movie anyway, so a cheaper, dodgier version following year cashing in is quite funny. It is a bit of a trashy film, which, you know, hasn't got great scores, but has built a little bit of a following and had a reevaluation. Now, the reason I think this has had a little bit of a new lease of life is it is real trash, but it's good, fun trash. It's, you know, reminiscent of 70s and early mid-80s trash. So it doesn't completely fit to the late 80s stuff that we've been talking about, because this feels much more early 80s and more cheesy and cheap and sleazy. But those are the ingredients that make a really fun 80s movie, like the 80s trash. So I think Psycho Cop has good ingredients for a crap direct-to-video, direct-to-DVD, TV movie, but unlike Parents and Stepfather 2, I feel like Psycho Cop has a bit more of a bar when it comes to content and sleaziness and gore. So it puts it a bit higher, and it just feels more of a throwback, and it belongs in that 80 period. So I have a bit of fun with it. It's you know, it's a nice time capsule film, and you know, it is a cheesy horror, but it gives you a laugh. It's a good bit of escapism and fun. It's an unintentional comedy in places. So you know, and Maniac Cop is probably a better film, and I would recommend Maniac Cop, but for a bit of fun to go with it as a nice double bill, Psycho Cop as well. So wrapping up 1989 with Monster High, I mean, that's a weird film. That is where the balance of stupidity and comedy just overtake it, and very cheesy, dated effects. Looking back at it now, it's got those crappy effects that just don't hold up well, and yeah, it's a bit of an oddball film. It's a very weird, bizarre film, and um, it's not great. It doesn't fully entertain. It's kind of an annoying movie where you're just like, really, and you know, it's a forgettable film. Really not a great way to sum up and end this 80s reign of horror. And that's definitely a turning point for what was to come and flood the market in the 90s. But it's a film that I'm not that fussed about. Certainly one that I'm not excited to keep revisiting. It's even as background viewing, that don't quite cut it. Unfortunately, I do feel like it's quite dire in story, performance. A lot of things go against that film. It's not a great one. Let's just say that, shall we? Cutting Class, 1989, featuring the one and only Brad Pitt as well. You know what? It's not a bad film. I think it kind of got a little bit overlooked because it fell into the tropes of some of the other films I've spoke about here. Where like Monster High, where it was a comedy horror, and we're entering that zone of, you know, kind of silly, childish humor comedy horror, which was a big difference from the early and mid 80s, and you know, stuff like Friday the 13th and Halloween sequels that were out in the 80s. You know, it was very different. It was very, you know, it was a different vibe and feel. It is a film that's probably worth a revisit because, you know, it's cheesy, but it's entertaining, and it does hold up a bit. It certainly is a lot better on a different level than like Monster High of the same year. But you know, the reason I think these underperformed at the time is because they wasn't delivering the goods and what people had become to expect from a horror film in the 80s. It's a lot lighter on the gore, you know, it's a lot more cheesy, and the whole tone is much more light-hearted, and the humorous side to it. So I think at the time that went against it, but you know, I do think that it is not as bad when you revisit it. You know, if you treat it for a bit of fun that doesn't take itself too seriously, then you're in for an okay time with that one. Not by all means one of the strongest films to go out on, but still a film that, you know, you can kick back, relax to, have some popcorn, and have a good damn bit of fun rounding up this fun 80s-tastic horror marathon.